Renting is not throwing money away. Okay, I'm literally going to say that again so it truly sinks in. Renting is not throwing money away. This is arguably the single biggest, most endlessly repeated lie in all of personal finance. I mean, think about it. Your parents, your uncle, your real estate agent, literally every mortgage ad you've ever seen has been feeding you this line for decades. Well, today, we're ending that myth. We are going to completely destroy this belief, and we're doing it using hard, current 2026 data.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into the math behind what is probably the biggest financial decision of your life. And I promise you, by the end of our time together, I'm going to prove exactly why that traditional homeownership advice, this stuff passed down from your parents, is just completely mathematically wrong. We're not just doing a simple pros and cons list here. No, we are doing a complete bottom-up math demolition. Let's get into it. Okay, let's kick things off by looking at exactly where this terrible advice actually came from. Because, look, your parents weren't trying to mislead you, right? This advice actually made perfect sense back in 1975. Back then, a house cost roughly 3 times the average annual salary. And yeah, sure, mortgage rates were high, but salaries were growing incredibly fast. You could buy a house, comfortably stay there for 30 years, and then happily retire on the equity. It was the American dream. But guys, that world is gone. Fast forward to 2026, the median home now costs 7.5 times the average salary, and mortgage rates are sitting around 6.1%. So the people giving you the exact same advice they got in 1975, they're scratching their heads wondering why it just doesn't work anymore. The reality is the math literally broke.
So what does this all mean? It means we absolutely have to reframe the entire debate. You see, the question everyone always asks is it better to rent or buy? But honestly, that's the wrong question entirely. The question absolutely nobody is asking is better for what and over how long? Because here's the absolute truth of the matter. Renting isn't always wrong, and buying isn't always right. The actual answer depends entirely on 3 specific numbers that most people making this massive life decision don't even know.
All right, let's start by blowing up the monthly payment myth. Because everyone, and I mean everyone, compares their rent straight to a mortgage payment. And that is just never a fair comparison. Let's look at the true receipt. The real monthly cost of owning the median American home right now in 2026. So the median home is $412,000. You put 10% down at a 6.1% mortgage, and your base payment is $2,250. Okay, sounds pretty manageable, right? But hold on. You got to add property taxes, which average out to about $340. Then there's home insurance at $150. Oh, and because you didn't put a full 20% down, you get hit with private mortgage insurance, PMI, which tacks on another $170 a month. And finally, the absolute silent killer that nobody ever budgets for, maintenance. Historically, this costs 1% of the home's value every single year, which breaks down to about $343 a month. You add all of that up, your actual real-world monthly cost is $3,253.
Okay, keep that $3,253 in your mind for a second. Got it? Good. Now let's look at the national median rent for a 2-bedroom apartment right now in 2026. It is just $1,450.
Wow. I mean, this brilliantly illustrates the devastating reality of the housing market today. When you subtract that rent from the true, fully loaded cost of ownership, you're looking at a gap of $1,803 every single month. That is not just a small difference. That is a massive lifestyle-altering amount of money that is literally leaving your bank account every 30 days when you choose to buy the median home instead of renting the median apartment. Now, here is the part that genuinely surprises most people, especially if you already own a home. Let's talk about the down payment trap. Think about it. To get that $412,000 house, you had to scrape together a 10% down payment, right? That's $41,200. Most people have to sacrifice and save for years to build that pile of cash. And what happens the moment you buy? You take that $41,200, you effectively lock it into the concrete foundation of a house where it just sits as equity earning a 0% liquid return. And you completely miss out on what the broader stock market could be doing for you. Let's really look at the opportunity cost of that decision. Path A is what we just talked about, locking $41,200 into a house for a 0% liquid return. But what about Path B? What if you rented, took that exact same $41,200 and invested it into the S&P 500? At its historical 10% average return, over 10 years, your money quietly compounds into $106,897. This means by choosing Path A, you literally gave up over $65,000 in potential investment growth just to hand a bank your money so you could then pay them interest for 30 years.
That is a massive opportunity cost, and I guarantee you your mortgage broker is never, ever going to mention it.
Now, I know exactly what the homeowners watching this explainer are screaming at their screens right now. But what about equity? Every single mortgage payment I make, I own more of the house. And you know what? You were absolutely right. I really want to validate that. Building wealth through home appreciation and paying down your principal, it's a very real thing. It absolutely is. So let's look at the math on that equity, shall we? Assuming a standard 4% home appreciation per year, your $412,000 house will be worth roughly $609,000 in 10 years. That is $197,000 in appreciation alone. Plus, obviously, you've been paying down the loan. So that leaves you with a genuinely impressive total equity of around $230,000. Sounds amazing, right? But here is the devastating problem that trips everyone up. Over those exact same 10 years, you also spent $216,000 in total unrecoverable housing costs. We're talking mortgage interest, property taxes, maintenance, and insurance. That money is gone forever. And here is the ultimate plot twist these numbers reveal. According to 2026 data from Empower and Zillow, when you take that beautiful $230,000 in equity and subtract the $216,000 in sunk costs, the buyer's actual net gain after a whole decade is roughly $14,000. Yeah, just $14,000. Meanwhile, look at our renter. The renter who took that $1,800 a month in housing savings and quietly, consistently invested it, they built a massive portfolio worth over $180,000 in an index fund. The renter absolutely crushed the buyer over a 10-year period. No contest. So you're probably asking yourself, how do I actually make this decision without relying on emotions or outdated advice? Well, you use this. This right here is the 5% rule. Seriously, take a screenshot of this right now, because this is the definitive math formula that settles the rent versus buy debate forever. And it's beautifully simple. All you do is take the total price of any home you're considering, multiply it by 5%, and then divide that number by 12. The number you get at the end, that is your break-even monthly rent.
Let's walk through it together to see the 5% rule in action, just to make sure we've got it. We'll take our median $412,000 home, multiply that by 5%, and you get $20,600 per year. Divide that by 12 months, and you get exactly $1,717 a month. So what does this actually mean for you? It means if you can find a comparable rental home for less than $1,717 a month, renting mathematically crushes buying every single time. It's not an emotional choice. It is literally just math. Now, if rent is higher than that, then yes, you should absolutely, seriously consider buying. But wait, because here's where I'm going to flip the entire argument on its head. I know everything we've talked about so far makes it sound like buying a house is some huge scam. It's not. The twist here is that buying isn't always wrong. It is simply wrong at the wrong time. You see, homeownership is fundamentally a long game. It's a game that requires immense patience. Take a look at the timeline. In 90% of U.S. markets in 2026, there is a very clear, predictable pattern. In year one, the renter wins heavily, obviously. But as you move past year 5 and approach year 7, the gap starts to narrow, until eventually they cross. Every single year you stay in a home past that 5 to 7 year mark, the math shifts more and more into the buyer's favor. Why? Well, because by year 10, your mortgage payment has remained completely fixed, while your neighbor's rent, thanks to good old inflation, might have skyrocketed to over $3,100 a month. So the mistake isn't buying a house. The real mistake is buying when you need to be flexible, or buying before you're truly ready to commit to a single location for the better part of a decade.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. When you look at your own life, your own finances, and your own goals, ask yourself, are you buying because you are truly ready for the 10-year-long game, locking in a fixed cost for your future? Or are you rushing into buying simply because an outdated 1975 myth told you that renting is throwing your money away? Don't let social pressure or your parents' well-meaning but totally outdated advice force your hand here. Take the 5% rule, apply it to your city, and let the math decide your future.